Last week, Steve West has brought his father to Northwest Colorado on a trophy elk hunt to fulfill his lifelong dream of taking a 6x6 bull elk. With snow falling heavily on the mountains and foothills, everyone is focused on the thousands of elk migrating to the low country and helping Bob West fill his tag. This week's episode of Steve's Outdoor Adventures begins now. Outdoor Adventures is sponsored by Burris Optics and the family of Eliminator Laser Scopes, Corbon Ammunition, CVA, Bergara Custom Barrels and Rifles, Kershaw Knives, and the new DeLorme InReach.
This is the exciting conclusion to last week's program. As you might recall, I'm in Northwest Colorado with my dad trying to get him his first branch-antlered bull in 30 years. Last week, I filled my mule deer tag, and now it's time to do everything we can to get Dad a big bull elk. And not just any elk, Dad wants a 6x6.
For those of you who missed last week's show, Steve is hunting with his father, Bob West, who just a year earlier survived a serious medical setback that nearly cost him his life. Steve had raced home after filling his deer tag on this very hunt after a call from his wife. And on his way home, Steve had made a deal with God. Let his dad live, and he'd take him on an elk hunt next season.
My dad had taken one bull elk in his entire life, 30 years ago on public lands in Northeast Oregon. And since then, he's shot several cows and eaten a lot of tag soup. And there I am running around the West shooting 6-point bulls every year. And Dad had always wanted a 6x6, and I'd been putting off taking him on a good hunt for way too long. And his health scare really got my attention. And it made me realize that you don't know how many years or opportunities that you have to do things with your parents. Now, Dad worked hard to get healthy, and he rehabbed his leg. He was definitely ready to go elk hunting.
That morning, with fresh snow on the ground, Guide Brian Garrison decided that they should try to get above the elk and ambush them on a cross fence where they'd jump and walk up a ridge to their bedding area.
We beat the elk here. They're still below us. We're gonna go get set up here on top. I like Dad up there. It's perfect. Everything's perfect.
We were just a little late, and the elk came through just as we were getting there. They ended up crossing way out in front of us, but we did see a bull way down there. We just didn't have a shot opportunity.
I knew Bob wasn't very mobile, so I figured out a great spot for an ambush.
After the short walk to their ambush site, Steve and his guide quickly got his father set up in the dead shot field pod and waited for the elk to start moving up the mountain.
The elk didn't have any idea we were there. The only problem was there were no branch-antlered bulls. And being the old meat hunter that Dad is, he was getting a bit anxious when he saw those spikes walking by. I almost had to take his bullets away. But with a huge snowstorm forecast for that night, I knew even more elk would be coming through tomorrow. That day ended without a shot fired, but we saw a lot more elk. And Brian was confident that if we got up there earlier the next morning, we would have a good shot at ambushing the elk before they moved through to their bedding areas. Getting close to elk is tough, but you can beat the swirling winds with the elk bomb. You can release a short burst or fog out the whole can, depending on your situation, keeping the elk herd calm while you work in for a shot. Available in 5-ounce cow and heat and dominant bull scents. Get in close and increase your odds with the elk bomb. Follow Steve's Outdoor Adventures on Facebook and Twitter and keep up with all the action, as well as find out about some great giveaways that we have throughout the year.
Shoot and see, reactive target. Shoot more, shoot better. With snow falling and hunting conditions becoming perfect, Steve and his dad have 2 days left to fill his father's elk tag before they have to head home in time for the Christmas holiday.
We had probably seen 300 to 400 head of elk the day before, and with snow piling up overnight, I was sure we'd be covered up with elk that next morning, and I was right. On our way up to the cross fence to ambush again, we spotted a herd of elk out in the sagebrush, and we started a hike out to get a closer look. We covered some country and really wore Dad out. We were walking on snow-covered ground and slick rocks, and I was worried that he was going to slip and fall, but he did really well, and we were able to get close to this herd. Unfortunately, there weren't any big bulls in this group either. By now, it was mid-morning, and we needed to get up to the cross fence as fast as we could to see if any elk were still moving through. I was worried that all the elk had passed our ambush site and that our morning hunt was lost. Boy, was I wrong. Most people wouldn't know it, but I have extensive hearing loss from years of working as a guide. My ears were exposed to thousands of rounds of unprotected shots in duck blinds and on mountainsides. Unfortunately, I got smart a little too late in life, and I have over 80% hearing loss in both ears. But some new advances in hearing protection have come out on the market, and you can bet that I use them. The Caldwell G3 earmuffs. They offer crystal clear amplification of low-level sounds that help me hear things I would otherwise miss with my hearing loss. And they offer a high degree of passive sound protection from gunfire to protect what little hearing I have left. A gunshot sends out vibrations or sound waves into the air. These funnel through the ear opening and down the ear canal and strike your eardrum, causing it to vibrate. This vibration travels through the ear, causing damage. And if this wasn't enough, exposure to excessive noise, such as gunshots, leads to production of free radicals, which causes permanent damage to the hair cells as well as the auditory nerve. Unlike eyesight and other physical injuries you could sustain, once you lose your hearing, you can't get it back. It's damaged and gone for good. And as often as I'm at the range and around the shooting sports, you can bet that I'm always wearing my G3 earmuffs. And I sincerely hope you are too, because it's never too late to start protecting your hearing.
bulls laying on the hill down here. Not quite big enough to go after because they're down in the canyon. Really want something big if we're gonna go after it, but time's running short. Blizzard's blowing down our throats right now. You can see it forming up on top of the mountain. Supposed to get 18 to 30 inches of snow today up on that mountain and down into where we're at. These elk are gonna be on the move, so we wanna be selective, but we wanna take every opportunity we can. We're gonna move out on the point, sit down, start glassing, see if we can't find a bigger bull. One worth going after down in that hole. What a storm that looks like.
Will Steve's dad get a shot at a huge Colorado bull elk? Find out after this short commercial break. Crossbreed holsters, leaders in holster concealment and comfort, handmade in the USA.
Our guide Brian Garrison and I were looking for tracks in the snow indicating some elk had passed through that morning. And I was driving along at a pretty good clip when we both spotted two big 6x6 bulls on the hillside. I stopped the truck, I backed up and parked it in the brush. We made a short stalk to get Dad into position.
I need a few minutes on the scope. We just drove around the mountain and spotted a great big bull up here on the side of the hill. He looks like a good one. Gotta make sure we can see. Yeah, we're good. That's a great big 6x6. Beautiful bull. We gotta get him on that. Let's go.
Sure enough, we come around the ridge and there's two great big bulls feeding right down the ridge right at us.
These elk were 550 to 600 yards away and moving uphill away from us and feeding. I knew two things. First, Dad's 308 was not enough gun for this kind of long-range shooting on a mature bull elk. I knew the gun could make the shot, but the caliber lacked the energy for a fast and ethical kill shot. So I pulled out my Warhammer and handed Dad my Bergara 338 Winchester Magnum. This gun is a tack driver, and with the new Burris Eliminator 3 laser scope, the shot distance was no problem, and the wind was light. I knew that the 225 grain Corbon TDPX bullets had more than enough energy at that range to get the job done. We all know what could happen if a firearm is left unsecured, and by using proper storage techniques, accidents can be avoided. Like many things in life, owning a firearm comes with responsibility. The safe storage message from the NRA is clear. Always store your firearm so that it's inaccessible to unauthorized persons. And by securing your firearm, you can keep it out of unwanted hands. And there are lots of ways to make your firearm safe. It's time for every firearm owner to store their gun safely.
This gun safety message has been approved by the NRA and brought to you by Stack On.
It seemed like Dad was never gonna pull the trigger. Inside, I was screaming, "Come on, Dad, pull the trigger already." He told me later that he was letting the bull get out there a little further so he could really take the Eliminator for a test drive. Right.
I ranged that bull at 635 yards and I put that dot on his shoulder and pulled the trigger, and bam, I knew I hit him.
Top one. I don't know where you're going.
got him.
They're coming right down the ridge. They're going in the trees. Let him go, Dad. Let him go. He's hit hard. He's hit hard. Hey, let's go cut him off. Good shot, Dad. We're gonna go cut him off. Okay. Safety that gun. I knew Dad had hit the bull, and in our binoculars, Brian and I knew the shot was low and a little behind the heart, but in the chest cavity. We could see blood as the bull turned down the ridge and walked into the brush with the other big bull. We gave him 30 minutes, and then Brian and I hiked up the ridge to look for the bull and left Dad and my cameraman Craig Bolden behind to watch, just in case he came back out. Brian and I found the big bull just 10 yards inside the tree line, piled up dead. The bullet had hit a little back, but the hydrostatic shock of the big .338 was more than the big boy could take, and there's no replacement for horsepower, especially when it's pushing a good bullet. Now I just needed to go down and bring Dad up so he could put his hands on his big bull.
Because I can.
Marathon seat covers are an official sponsor of Steve's Outdoor Adventures. When we come back from commercial break, Bob gets his first look at his big Colorado bull. This segment was sponsored by Steiner Optics and the new Predator binoculars. Steve's Outdoor Adventures is sponsored by Burris Optics and the family of Eliminator laser scopes. Corbon Ammunition, CVA, Bergara Custom Barrels and Rifles, Kershaw Knives, and the new DeLorme InReach.
If you'd like to book your own guided big game hunting adventure, give my office a call. I will personally take your calls, answer your questions, and help you book the hunting or fishing trip of a lifetime.
To make the 635-yard shot, Bob was shooting Steve's Bergara Custom .338 Winchester Magnum, topped with a new Eliminator 3 laser scope, and shooting Corbon's 225 grain TDPX bullets. A setup Steve is fine-tuned out to 1,000 yards.
It took us a while, but we got Dad up there to this bull, and things got pretty emotional at that point. I really believe that he was convinced that he would never shoot a big bull elk again. And to have that dream come true and have it happen on film right before Christmas made him very happy. About 150 yards, Dad.
Okay, well, we'll get there.
I know. 450-foot vertical climb. Now, Dad's my biggest fan, and he watches every show. He's seen me hunt the entire world, and he watches me hunt across the West and shoot 6-point bulls every year. And I had failed to realize that Dad needed to get out there and fulfill his hunting dreams too. And to see him put his hands on that 6-point bull was pretty awesome.
Woo! Damn! Here, Dad, let me have that rifle. He'll walk around him, tip his head up. Let me see what he looks like. Here's a big body on it. Oh, you gonna be strong enough to tip that head? Whew. That's something else. He's got broke that off.
Broke G2 and
he almost grew 3 here, Dad. Look at this.
Yeah.
Tried to grow 3 there. It's been a pretty amazing morning to hunt here. Brian spotted these bulls up on the hillside, 2 of them, and you know, we're real fortunate to have a great rifle. That Bergara 338 Win Mag is a terrific flat shooting caliber, and it's got a lot of whop to it. And the Eliminator 3 Dad ranged him out, was it 635? 635 yards, and hit him good, and he came into the trees and laid down. Brian and I hiked up here, and we were able to find and recover the bull, and we went back down, got Craig and Dad, and we got him up here. What a day, huh?
What a day.
What a day. Now, since that hunt, we've gone fishing in Alaska where Dad caught his first king salmon and he saw his first grizzly bears. And I have a few more hunting and fishing trips planned for us over the next few years. But my advice to all of you watching this show is to get out there and do it. And don't forget to spend time with your parents and your kids. Don't forget the last generation, because they're probably the ones you have to thank for your hunting heritage. And you never know how many more days, weeks, months, or God willing years that you have left with them. And we can't forget the next generation, because the future of our proud traditions rest in their hands. And hopefully, they'll be the ones taking us hunting someday. Now, unfortunately, that's all the time we have for this week's show. But please, remember to join us again next week for another exciting episode of Steve's Outdoor Adventures.
With a big bull elk and a trophy mule deer in the truck, Steve and his dad point the truck back toward Oregon and start the long drive home.